And we're back at the show. This is Gerald Glassford once again from the Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. Thank you so much for being part of today's program. Well, it is that time of the year, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which I think should change its name to the Music Hall of Fame because they no longer really always represent rock and roll, but that's for another day. They did announce their nominees for the upcoming 2019 class for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is our annual we like or we do not like session each and every year when it comes to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And we've actually got included someone else this time besides myself and, of course, my usual guest for this. It is Kevin Eldridge from the Flopcast and also Mike Faber from the ESO Network. Guys, it's great to have you on the show. Kevin, no chicken this time. No chicken avatar. What's up with that?
Oh, I believe they may be hiding behind the scenes, but there is no shortage of chickens here in Chicken Town where we do the Flopcast from. They're everywhere.
Sorry, residual noise from my daughter, which will be edited out in post. And
it's Mike Faber, not Faber.
Oh, sorry. Mike Faber from the ESO Network. Mike, it's great to have you finally on the Pop Culture Cosmos. We have been a happy part of the ESO Network for going on 2 years now, and it's been awesome. It's been an awesome experience. Both you, Kevin, and everyone at the ESO Network has been tremendous to us, and I want to say publicly, it's just a great honor to be a part of your network.
Well, you're part of the family, and it's just a great honor to have PCC part of it. And I can't believe 24 months and I'm just on the show now.
You're always welcome. That red carpet is always there out for you now. Just wanted to say I apologize for not getting you on here sooner, but it took us, well, let's just leave it later in the show. It took always us for a little moaning session that we're going to have probably in another, little bit here. But first off, we got to talk about the actual nominees themselves. It's kind of I don't know. It seems like it's a little bit smaller, more subdued crowd than normal. And the reason why I say that, we have a lot of returning nominees, but no real blockbuster standouts, in my opinion, than normal. No automatic 1-2 punch type deals. This year's nominees include Def Leppard, Devo, Janet Jackson, John Prine, Kraftwerk, LL Cool J, MC5, Radiohead, Rage Against the Machine, Roxy Music, Stevie Nicks, The Cure, Todd Rundgren, Rufus and Shaka Khan, and the Zombies. Because
poor Shaka Khan. She's been on that thing so long. I think she's been on it since year one or something.
Yeah, I know there's also Kraftwerk is 4 different times as well. I know there's several artists there that have been up. LL Cool J is 4 different nominations. So yes, it seems like it's been a long time for a lot of these nominees. So I think if this is the year they're going to get in, I think this would be the year, because like I was saying previously, that I think in previous years there was always 2, 3, or 4 headline acts that were no-brainers in going in, that were taking up those spots away from these other nominees, which people would say maybe borderline or what have you. But Mike, I'm going to start with you. Your thoughts on the nominees for the Hall of Fame, and if you had 5 to choose from, in your opinion, that have to go in out of all these qualified candidates, which ones would you choose?
See, that's tough for me, because for me, it is a stronger class this year. There's no true blockbuster classic rock band that is due to go in. That's a total innovator. Like in the past couple of years, you had Electric Light Orchestra go in. You had bands like the Moody Blues, or Yes, you had these total bands that innovated the industry. But now, you're starting to get more settled into it, but you have some amazing bands out there. And for me, it was tough actually to choose just 5. And for me, I put Roxy Music because you had Brian Ferry, and, you also had Brian Eno producing. This was just amazing stuff. And it was Roxy Music was an innovator, there wouldn't be, a lot of Duran Duran or, other bands that came later in the 80s, a whole generation of very suave, very cool type music that, Roxy Music basically laid the ground for. But, I think this is the year Janet Jackson is finally going to make it in.
She's got pretty good odds. I would probably say this year of
yeah, she doesn't have a lot of competition this year, and she has more number one hits than Stevie Nicks already has. And Stevie Nicks is already on the ballot, and I think she's deserving, but she's also made it in with Fleetwood Mac already. So I definitely think this is Janet's year. I really think so. Also, John Prine. John Prine is one of those crossover artists. He does country, he does folk, he does rock, and he also set the table for a lot of later, folk singers and singers like, who like Bonnie Raitt and such used a lot of his music. And I think he, is a trendsetter, and I definitely think he should be a first ballot entry. I also think Def Leppard is a first entry right there. Def Leppard, was 80s music at its best. And, when you thought of MTV Generation, Def Leppard was right up there. And I'm not even going to make an arm joke or anything for this part. So I definitely think, they've given blood, sweat, and tears and arms. What the hell? But I definitely think Def Leppard is definitely deserving. And for my last pick, I was going to do The Cure, but, because Robert Smith and the crew, definitely was new wave at its best, and they are the kings of goth music. But I'm going to take a little swerve right here. I'm going to say for MC5, who basically established the Detroit sound coming out of the late 60s, early 70s, and they are hard rockers, and they have a sound so unique that has been copied by so many artists like Guns N' Roses, Metallica, so many others. It's just amazing that, they haven't been initiated into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that's my 5.
That's actually a great list. I liked what you're saying, and a lot of it was very compelling as far as getting them in. I should put you on. We should get you on that panel as far as so you would become a fair and reasonable individual that would be able to go ahead and elect people into the Hall of Fame without those kind of politics that are always involved.
I would love to be, if I could possibly do that, because I'm a music head. My first concert was Woodstock, so I do understand.
There you go. Hey, well, you know what? You know what? Your notice will be in the mail from Cleveland. I'll tell you right now.
Okay, can't wait.
Oh, there you go. And of course, it couldn't be a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame discussion without you, my friend Kevin. So please, as the man, behind the Flopcast.
Yes.
Is he the man behind the chicken?
Well, I won't say that part, but as the man behind the Flopcast, please let us know, what are your thoughts on 5 groups, 5 artists, 5 individuals, 5 whatever, that as far as the nominees that are in there that are involved, which of the 5 you would choose to go in and be elected for that great honor for 2019 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
All right. And, this is kind of a special year for me as far as the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because since the last time we spoke about the Hall of Fame, I finally went out to Ohio and I visited the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame earlier this year. And it's, for all the complaining we do about it, it's a magnificent facility to visit. It's really, really wonderful. I wish you could spend a week there. We were there for a few hours, and it's fantastic. Flaws and all, acknowledging the issues that we justifiably have with it. This is quite a diverse list that we're looking at this year. And if I had to pick my 5 that I would go with, if they let me induct 5 acts off of this list of nominees, some of mine would be some reruns from Mike's list. Def Leppard, I'm an 80s kid, 80s pop, 80s rock. Sure. I mean, last year, those big 80s arena acts really kind of dominated the Hall of Fame, and that we got Bon Jovi and we got the Cars and we got Dire Straits, and they all got waved in one big arena rock of a year for the Hall of Fame. That might keep going this year with Def Leppard. I think once you open the door and let Bon Jovi in, I think we might as well let Def Leppard in.
Do you still have your Pyromania T-shirt on standby?
It's always ready to go.
or Hysteria. Don't forget Hysteria.
Oh, those were such monster albums. Absolutely. I was never a big Def Leppard guy, but they were such a monstrous act commercially, and I think that's valid. It's not the Hall of Fame it's a combination of influence and critical acclaim, but also your impact culturally and your commercial impact as well, I think, can get you in. So
I just will say this: you can walk in through department stores and still see their shirts being sold. The fact is, they're thought of so much, like you said, within the realm of pop culture, whether it's the art design, their album design, what have you, that really captured the public's attention for so many years. Yeah. Def Leppard still remains relevant to this day, and that's a great inclusion as well.
They're filling stadiums to this day. They came to Boston and played Fenway Park earlier this summer. So Def Leppard, I'm going to go along with Mike on that. And I'm also going to go along with Mike on Janet Jackson. I think, and again, I'm not a big Janet Jackson fan particularly, but she was so massive culturally and part of it as the 80s was shifting, that the back half of the 80s, as we were moving towards really the emphasis on dance music, really taking over the top 40, and the rock and the pure pop was kind of taking a back seat to the modern R&B and dance stuff. And Janet, even more so than her brother, arguably for a while there, was really taking the lead on that and was such a massive, popular superstar. So I think Janet definitely deserves to get in as well. And
I want to ask you something on Janet Jackson, for both of you guys. Do you think there might be some hesitancy for putting her in because she was also on last year's list? Do you think the Super Bowl controversy still remains as far as with some in their minds, and that's the reason why she has not been included in as of yet?
No,
I don't think so. That's such a minor
novelty. I hope not.
Yeah, I mean it was a long time ago, and what was it? When you look at, how many horrifying scandals have we suffered through as a planet since then, that, Janet's boob, is that something that people are still clutching our pearls over? So no, I think that's a minor footnote that who cares anymore.
Exactly. I'm the same boat as you are. I think, I hate to say it, some racism might be involved with why she hasn't gotten in yet. And, a lot of times it almost seems like they only want to take one, artist from African-American descent, or, some, foreign descent or something like that. And I'm not trying to be controversial here. And it almost seems like Janet's got caught in the crosshairs with that a lot of ways. Because if you look between her and Stevie Nicks, Janet Jackson has been so much more successful and so much more groundbreaking with the music she's done than Stevie Nicks has.
Yeah, Stevie's solo career is not Hall of Fame worthy, I think. Everybody loves Stevie Nicks and she's cool, and absolutely she's in with Fleetwood Mac, and rightly so. Yeah, I was kind of surprised to see Stevie on the list of nominees this year, because I think even if they're looking to beef up the women in the Hall of Fame, as they should, there's a long list of women I'd put ahead of Stevie.
I agree with you both on that, on both your sentiments. And I think there is a long list of ladies that actually have performed at a higher level, have been more successful as a solo artist than Stevie Nicks. Of course, it's a natural that she's in as part of Fleetwood Mac. That's a given. I'll tell you that any day as far as that's concerned. But as a solo artist, you're right. She does not have the body of work that many other women have, or actually will have when they become eligible for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, so many women currently are eligible who have never been nominated, I think, and the Go-Go's would be at the top of my list for that. And look at Pat
I'm shocked
Benatar.
they haven't. Neither of them have ever been
Yeah.
nominated.
Oh, yeah. Pat Benatar, I think, should be in as well. One that occurred to me earlier today, again, I'm not a big fan, but such a long, crazy career and cultural impact is what about Cher?
That's correct. I mean, is she in with Sonny and Cher? I'm not.
No, she's not.
Wow,
No, not
neither.
at all. No.
Wow, that's a shocker right there for you.
Yeah. So again, that's just three, and obviously we could name a dozen more right now. To go back to my list of the five that I would pick, well, they kind of go together. My final two on the list, and one is an act that's been nominated a few times before, and the other, this is their first time, but this is a band that the very first time we talked about the Hall of Fame on the Flopcast, which was probably 6 years ago, this was one of my top bands that I really, really would love to see in, and that's Devo, of course. And hand in hand with Devo, I think, would be Kraftwerk, who obviously they've been on the list before. But these two super influential, so important, and coming out of the 70s and the electronic and synth-based music, they go hand in hand in a way, I think. Even though Devo was more guitar-based, they still have that kind of robotic synthy sound when they want to. And I think that going against them is, Kraftwerk certainly did not make an impact commercially in America. Devo barely made an impact commercially in America. That Devo, even though everybody knows them, they had 1.5 hit songs, and we'll leave it at that. So I hope that people don't dismiss them as a novelty. And I'm also wondering if it's interesting to see both those bands together on the same list of nominees for the same year. Are they going to cancel each other out?
Because they've been on the list in separate years, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't think Devo was included last year, but the year before, and Kraftwerk was included last year, if I'm not mistaken, or flip-flop.
I don't think Devo's ever been nominated before.
Oh, okay. Well, then Kraftwerk, I know you and I have discussed before, so that's
yeah. They've been nominated at least a couple of times before, but this is the first for Devo, and long overdue.
Okay.
But I wonder if the presence of both these bands on the same list, will they kind of choke each other out and both neither band make the cut, or will the presence of one be able to push the other one into being inducted? That'll be interesting to see.
Well, that will be interesting to see. And you know what? On my list, guess what? Devo is on there. And if it is their first effort that's out there, their first time that they've been nominated, it is long overdue. And I'll tell you what, with Devo, they really revolutionized a new wave sound. And as also a child from the 80s, I think, well, a teenager from the 80s, I should say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All of us are teenagers.
Yes.
Yes. We're not children of the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. So if that's the case, I am going to go with Devo as one of my first choices because of the fact that they had such a heavy influence, even to this day, in regards to a new wave synthesized sound that actually you heard quite recently on Thor Ragnarok as far as their score is concerned, because I wonder who was responsible for it. Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo, of course.
Yeah.
But
well, exactly.
He does a lot of movie work.
Even though they didn't have #1 hits, they were still such an influence on the early 80s.
Absolutely. And that to me is more important as far as an influence, as far as going forward for other artists. And that to me really weighs heavy on that. That's why my second choice would be Kraftwerk. And this is something I've spoken to you before about, Kevin, especially now with the heavy DJ sound, the heavy recorded sound, edited sound, produced sound that's out there. You see DJs flying all around the world that get millions of dollars. They go to Las Vegas, they go to Dubai, they go to all over, and they get all this attention, Marshmello, and the list goes on as far as who is important now in the music industry. That all these other bands, the Chainsmokers, everybody wants to go ahead and perform with them and all that. The thing is, all those DJs, all those produced, all those heavily edited type of songs get a start or get a heavy influence from Kraftwerk. And I've spoken to DJs before about the influence of Kraftwerk. And if you listen to the music, like you said, it's not commercially, has not been commercially viable really in the United States. But Overseas, they've really played well because that audience for several years was way ahead of the curve in regards to their tastes and what they like in regards to a synthesized, produced, and edited type sound. I love their music personally, so yes, it would be great to see them go in. But I think as far as an influence on today's culture, I think Kraftwerk should be a no-brainer as far as to at least be in. And they've been nominated 4 times, so at least I think at the very least that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame understands this and knows this and is trying at some point in time to get them into the hall because they're just going to keep nominating them until they finally get in. When it comes to other bands, I've got 3 more to choose from as far as artists are concerned, and I'm going to go with Def Leppard because I already talked about and already spoke about their cultural influence even to this day. Kids I see wearing Def Leppard t-shirts, and I'm not even sure if they've ever actually heard a song from them, so which is actually very cool to see. And the fact that like I said, as a teenager from the 80s, I had songs that I liked because their songs not only translated as far as you could probably even call it pop metal to an extent because it bled over into top 40 and pop stations that were being played on the radio where other heavy metal, hard rock, hair band type deals may not have been. So I think their cultural influence as far as not only their success as a music group over the many years that they've been out, but also as well that the albums that they produce having such an influence down the road as far as our culture, I think they get in. Janet Jackson, it just goes back to what you said. You guys both have said spoken so highly about her and her cultural influence and her success when she was like you said, ahead of her brother at one time, as far as sales, as far as prominence, as far as everybody wanted to know, what was going on with her, what her next single, her next album. In fact, her success reminds me a lot of what Taylor Swift is doing right now, where everything she's putting out there is going number 1, top 10. It just right with a bullet. Just reminds me of that streak she was on in the late 90s where she was really the one that people were really listening to as far as an artist with a heavy R&B influence that really transcends today. And as a female solo artist, I think she definitely is a leader as far as the career, the quality, the numbers, the number of songs that she had that just truly transformed an era, a part of time that just truly we can't forget. And I think Janet Jackson deserves to go in. And last but not least, my 5th choice is a little bit different from you guys, but I think it's something I mentioned on last year's show as well for you, Kevin. I think I'll have to recall back, but it is LL Cool J. And,
Sure.
and I know it's not because of his work with NCIS Los Angeles. That might be a footnote on his career, but his work in the early 90s, as far as even through the 90s with his work as far as a rap artist, I think qualifies for me. And I think the influence that he has with younger rap artists and even rap artists to this day, they still mention him quite frequently as a mentor, as an influence, as someone that they want to emulate, and that he was able to transition that into a successful entertainment career as a whole. I think just it beckons him for the Hall of Fame. And he's also been nominated several times. And I think he's also going to be someone that if any year is going to be it, this is going to be it, because they're just going to try and nominate him enough times until he actually gets in the Hall himself.
Yeah, I would not be surprised to see LL get in this year, especially since they did not induct a rap artist last year. I think they might be looking to make up for that, and this might be LL's turn. I mean, certainly, I don't know too much about his work, but I know that he's one of the originals. This was one of the first rap artists that was charting in the top 40 back in the 80s. So I think.
Well, if you don't know that, Mama said knock you out.
Yes, she did.
Yes.
I think I still owe you one of my picks, actually, Gerald. I forgot to mention, but it's another rerun from Mike's list, but that's MC5. I'm going along with that pick as well.
That's a solid choice. Very, very solid choice as well. I think, to be honest with you, I think Roxy Music, maybe The Cure, Todd Rundgren, some of those bands that I didn't choose or neither of us chose, but I think you actually, Mike, chose Roxy Music. I think they're going to get ahead in some of the other bands that we've talked about. especially Roxy Music, which I think has been eligible for a long time. I think they're going to get in. But my choice was the 5 right there. So if you got any choices out there, please just let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com.
It's
Guys?
interesting on some of them that we didn't talk about, though.
Yes.
That we've ignored. A lot of people, were shocked that The Cure hasn't been nominated before. And, you also have, like we talked about, Rage Against the Machine or Radiohead, but Radiohead doesn't even really want to even be in there.
And with Rage Against the Machine, it only really have, I don't want to say they have just really one song, but they have a couple, they have really one strong album and one really strong song that they could really bank on. And I'm not sure that's enough to get them in the hall, but I think they will at some point because they've been nominated twice already.
Yeah, Radiohead, that was the one last year that everybody thought, well, they're a lock. They're getting in on their first ballot easily. And then they didn't, probably due in part to their refusal to participate. But they just might get in either this year or before too long anyway, just because they are so critically acclaimed.
But also there's kind of like a pop culture backlash against them as far as these days when it comes to Radiohead. They're not thought of as fondly as they once were when they were actually making hit music. Am I not mistaken on that? But they seem to be kind of at times, sometimes like the butt of a joke at some given points in time.
Yeah, that could be.
No, agree with you on that one.
Yeah. I mean, at the time they were very successful, big hit after big hit, but now it's just like, I guess the music has not aged well enough for a lot of people. So I guess it seems like maybe a lot of bands are just trying to veer away from that. Will it lead to another type of, maybe instance of ignoring them once again for the hall? I'm not sure, because like you said, they were so critically acclaimed at the time and they were so big during their time that it may be too hard to ignore them continuously over the course of time. Well, that leads us to this portion of the interview here, and each year this is our crying session, everyone. So if there are some men crying up in the next few minutes, I do want to sincerely apologize in advance, because this is now the portion of the interview where we talk about what bands that were not nominated we think should go in. And I asked the guys already to choose maybe 1, 2, or 3, whoever they feel should be included and should already actually be involved and be already enshrined in the Hall of Fame. So, Kevin, I'm going to hold off on you for a sec because I know where you're going with it.
Okay.
Mike, I want to hear your thoughts on exactly who do you think continually gets ignored that you feel should go into the Hall of Fame?
Well, Kevin had actually mentioned earlier 2 of the people I think have grossly been, ignored by the Hall of Fame, and they're both from the early 80s. And, I'm thinking the Go-Go's, who was the first real power girl band of the 80s. They had number 1 hit after number 1 hit after number 1 hit. And, it's just a true shame that they haven't been recognized for that. And, I just always thought the Go-Go's were always a lot better than people gave them even credit for. So I definitely think the Go-Go's should be in there. But I also think you guys had also mentioned Pat Benatar. She's the first woman of, new wave music. And, she is like Donna Summers was the queen of disco. Pat Benatar was the queen of MTV and new wave, of that era.
Now, I want to ask you real quick, Mike, on the Go-Go's. If you induct the Go-Go's, would you induct the Bangles as well?
No, not at all. I think the Go-Go's were a much more influenced band than the Bangles ever were. And the Bangles had a lot less hits than they did. They had Manic Monday. They had, all the other songs that they did. And, but you don't hear them all the time on the radio like you still hear the Go-Go's and, and such. So
I think the Bangles, if you just add up if we're going by hits, which is not the only fair way to judge who gets
not
in,
at all. But you also look at
I would say, yeah, I would say the Bangles probably have more hits than the Go-Go's. I mean, how many hits did the Go-Go's actually have? 4 or 5. But the Go-Go's were first. They were very important in here's this group of young women doing this. They're their own rock band. They were so super important to what came afterwards. That the Go-Go's, I'd be fine with the Bengals getting in eventually, but the Go-Go's should be in right now.
Okay, but my one pick of somebody who actually should be in the Hall of Fame and is not, and you guys probably are going to lead into this anyway. I'm going to say Mike Nesmith solo should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Wow.
You're trying to start something, Mike, there.
No. My reasoning is he was pretty much the father of the music video and such, and you don't realize that, and a lot of people don't remember that he, because of the videos he was putting out, and his revolutionary with the medium, he, they decided to make him a TV channel based off of that, and he was very influential on creating MTV. And I definitely think for that alone, not even saying the work he did with the Monkees or his solo work, as a musician, should qualify for being in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so that would not be as a performer, even that would be in one of those other categories they have for
exactly.
Yeah.
Like lifetime achievement award or something like that.
They've inducted there are DJs and producers and people who are not the actual performers who are inducted in separate categories.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I would say is if you ever spoke to him, I think he would get more pleasure about talking about his directorial career than his Monkees career, or even to an extent his music career as well.
Well, exactly. Or just talk to him about his mom inventing whiteout,
Yeah, I remember that as well. So that's some great choices, and that's some great thoughts from you, Mike. Kevin, here we go. Get the Kleenex out, everyone. Here it comes. Some adult men crying here. Go ahead, Kevin, on your thoughts on some artists.
Yeah,
an artist that you think continually gets ignored that should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
I think before we get to my personal favorites that are so criminally overlooked, I think a big blind spot that we still have to point out again that the Hall of Fame continues to have is metal. There are so few metal bands have, outside of Black Sabbath, the original, and then Metallica, and not a lot more that really fits the metal category beyond a couple of bands have been inducted. And when you consider that Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and these major important bands that are never even considered to be inducted, I think that's really ridiculous that those bands are still waiting. So we want to throw out that mention, at least, that we need more metal in the Hall of Fame. Beyond that, I hope I'm not falling into rerun mode too much from our previous conversations, but there are acts that get dismissed as novelty acts. And we mentioned that Devo, I fear, used to fall into that category. So it's nice to see them finally actually nominated. But I know that most, if not all of us on the call right now are huge Weird Al Yankovic fans. And, Weird Al's been doing this for 40 years at this point. And you can dismiss him as a novelty act because he is a novelty act by design. But so great at what he does, and so important, and really a remarkable body of work that I think that if the Hall of Fame didn't take itself so seriously, I think they should let in Weird Al.
I agree with you on that. In fact, he does own and possess a #1 album. His previous album, I believe, did hit #1 on the Billboard charts, and there is no excuse at this point. He's had the body of work now with several hits, several top 10, several top 100, several top 100 hits that are out there that he's had over the course of time. And he's revolutionized a genre that we didn't even know existed before he came on, that he's really done by himself, that he's really created for himself, that no one else has been able to successfully duplicate, and may not even after he's gone from the music scene.
And then if people think, oh, he just does parodies, how can you get in if you do parodies? Well, Weird Al this year went on tour and said, hey, we're just going to do a stripped down acoustic show, no props, no videos, and we're not going to do parodies. I'm just going to go out and play my original songs. He did a whole tour like that this year and filled up theaters across the country doing it. So Weird Al is not just a parody guy either.
And there's that is actually just a great assessment. I think he does belong in the Hall of Fame. And I think he's quite forgotten about because of the fact that he thinks that people think, right, like you say, he just does parodies, and nobody realizes the tremendous amount and tremendous array of original songs he has. Okay, my friend. All right.
Are we doing this?
We're doing it. All right. Okay.
Well, we're on the subject already, thanks to the mention of Mike Nesmith, of course. But yeah, it's a tradition now. We have to point out the grossest oversight in the history of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is always has been and continues to be, and by design, because the guy in charge of the Hall of Fame, apparently it's his lifelong vow is that they shall never be in the Hall of Fame. And of course, we think the Monkees should be in.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Once again.
Come on, boys. It's, a little bit me. It's a little bit you.
I guess I must be a daydream believer. What are you going to
do? But it continues to just be a black eye on the reputation of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And again, I like the Hall of Fame. I visited the Hall of Fame this year, had a great day there, and we have a great time watching the concert every year and discussing who gets in. It's great. But, rock is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be goofy. Lighten up. Let the Monkees in.
I'm telling you what, nobody's going to be your stepping stone. That's for sure.
You got that right.
Yes. But I cannot agree with you more. The Monkees, they did something that no one else did. People talk about, they didn't play their own music, blah, 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 all those lame excuses, which are not true, which are not founded. And unfortunately, over the years, it's perpetuated itself where there's a lot of people that are for, and there's some that are within power, like you're talking about, that are against. And unfortunately, those individuals that are against the Monkees being allowed into the Hall of Fame, it's just ridiculous. I know they're over it, but unfortunately, us fans that are out there, the numerous thousands and thousands of fans that still love the Monkees to this day and appreciate everything they do, not just with the TV series, but obviously their tremendous array of music as well, that they're not in the Hall of Fame. And I know it irks continuously us each and every year we continue to talk about it.
Yeah, there is no credible argument for the Monkees not being in the Hall of Fame. There's no good argument to be made. The people that say they didn't play their instruments, well, they're wrong, or they didn't write their songs, that's all wrong, or they're put together, they're manufactured. If that's your criteria, for one thing, the Monkees did play their instruments, they did write songs, and they continue to be a band together for over the decades, for over 50 years now. But even if let's say they never wrote their own songs, let's say they never played their own instruments, let's say they were just a completely manufactured singing group. Well, you have to kick the Supremes out of the Hall of Fame then, don't you?
Yeah, and there's probably other acts as well that's relied.
Absolutely. So yeah, no, there's no argument that holds up. It's just a personal vendetta of the petty guy at the top who just treats them like a goofy novelty joke that doesn't belong in my nice fancy Hall of Fame, and so they shall not get in.
And we will continue to cry nonetheless. In every year.
Well, and again, it's something it's a joke at this point, and the Monkees are fine with it. They've all, I've heard Mickey Dolenz speak very nicely on the subject, and he's a gentleman about it, and the people have spoken as far as the Monkees, because the Monkees are loved around the world to this day. They still go out and tour. Today, as we record the show right now, just today, the Monkees just released, after 52 years, their first Christmas album just came out today. So we're still getting new Monkees music.
Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. I can't wait to get that myself.
Yeah.
All right. So you've heard the list of who we think should go in. If you have any thoughts out there, please let us know, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com, or you can just go ahead and message us on our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the whole 9 yards on social media at Pop Culture Cosmos. Guys, before we get on out, or before I actually have you tell everybody why they need to listen to all your great programs, I want to ask you a quick question, but want to hear both your thoughts. Should they just at this point change the rock and get the rock and roll out of it and just leave it as the Music Hall of Fame at this point? Because I think they should just go ahead and just give up this rock and roll when they're all these acts that are coming in that are deserving are just not translating what rock and roll was is about. And it should just be left to maybe called a Music Hall of Fame or whatever it is you want to go ahead and call it, but something other than the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Mike, I want to get your thoughts on that, and then Kevin, I'll get yours as well.
Oh, I agree completely that I think the term Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is kind of outdated. Rock and roll was actually, had its roots in bluegrass, in the blues, in soul music. There's so many inspirations that are being left out because of it. And, rock and roll is not what rock and roll once was. If you want to call it rock and roll, keep it pure. Don't put rap in. Don't put, some of these folk music stars. Don't put country music in. Don't put, soul and R&B and
or
all
synthesized music or anything.
Exactly. It's ridiculous if you're going to do that. But it's time to change it to the Music Hall of Fame. Make it all incorporating. And literally with so much great music out and so many artists that they're missing out on. There is a Bluegrass Hall of Fame. There's a Country Music Hall of Fame. And, why not combine them all? Bring in those people that have been, influencers, bringing in people who, made it to the rock and roll top 40 or the pop music top 40. Why not include them? Why not include, even more of the electronic music that's starting to come in? I know it's 25 years, I think, that they have to do to, from the release of their first album for the artist to be inducted. There's a lot coming in that's, 25 years ago. That's, for me, that's when I was seeing grunge music in Seattle. That's when I was going to see, a lot of these, more of mixed bands, when you started getting into what they call like newgrass or some of the, some of the newer folk music or some of the, crossover country artists, a lot of, the newer country artists like Garth Brooks should definitely be in here. He's bigger. He's had many hits on the, top 40 and, number one, and he's influenced rock stars and such. So, where do we draw the line? Let's pull this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame down and just make it the Music Hall of Fame.
I agree with you 100%. Just combine them all, put them in one central location, keep it in Cleveland if you want, what have you, put them all in there, put them all combined, and just make it one big happy thing for all music fans to enjoy. I couldn't agree with you more on that. Kevin, do you have any thoughts on that? Should it just be left to Rock and Roll Hall of Fame or something different?
I like the name Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I like that it's not strictly rock and roll. So I think I kind of like the Monkey's omissions aside, I tend to like the way that this works, in that there's room to bring in artists that are not strictly rock and roll. If you're adjacent to popular music in America, I think there's a spot for you. But I like the name Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So, but I think that when you bring in an act like Madonna, like Madonna's not rock and roll. I heard people complain at the time, and I think, well, yeah, she's not rock. She's pop certainly, but Madonna's a cultural phenomenon, and she deserves to be in. Country is an area that's a gap for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's not a lot of country in the Hall of Fame currently, and I agree. Garth Brooks, I think, deserves to get in. And you could look at a bunch of people. I mean, off the top of my head, the only country act I can think of is going way back, and that's Johnny Cash, who is in the hall in the rock. Johnny is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but he goes back to that early era with when it was kind of coming out of its rockabilly roots with Carl Perkins and all those guys. But yeah, I would look at, Dolly Parton. I would look at Willie Nelson.
Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers, absolutely. So sure, I would have no problem with those kind of
Willie Nelson.
Coming in. Yeah, Willie Nelson, definitely. So now that said, every single last little country artist I don't think necessarily needs to go in, but that's why we have a country music hall of fame. So I guess my feeling is I don't get hung up on the name. I like the name, but I like the fact that they can be more inclusive than just pure. Let's only let in the Ramones. That might be tightening the rules a little too much.
All right. Well, that's some great thoughts. Tell you what, guys, it's been great having you on the show. But before we head on out, I want to hear why your shows on both the ESO Network for you, Mike, and the Flopcast for you, Kevin, are so awesome. Mike, I'm going to have you go off first on why the ESO Network is the place to go for everything geek.
Well, because it is a station by geeks for geeks. And it is right now 27 different shows, all filled with fun geekiness. And we basically, talk about everything, any topic you could think of that's geek related. There's shows like PCC. There's the Flopcast. There's Dr. Geek, which talks about science. We have the Pro Wrestling Roundtable, hence what the name is. And then we also have Earth Station Who, which is a Doctor Who podcast. We have multiple Doctor Who podcasts. We have, a literature podcast. We have a podcast talking about mysteries. We have podcasts talking about queer versions of Doctor Who. It's amazing what geek culture could be about. And as we say on Earth Station 1, which is the mothership show, as people like to call it, you could be a geek about anything. And you could be a geek about art. You could be a geek about fantasy. You could be a geek about sports, nature, the weather, music. How about that? Music you could be a geek about. So, Earth Station 1 is, your place for everything geek. And as we like, our slogan on that is, it's time to let your inner geek out to play. And, that's what the ESO Network represents. It's a family of shows that, represent everything that's geek. And you can find us, of course, at esonetwork.com.
That's esonetwork.com everywhere, or reach out to them on their awesome social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, on Twitter. Just reach out to them. Got to check out everything that they have to offer with all the great shows, including ours, Kevin, the PCC Multiverse, and, of course, the awesome show, the Flopcast, which has an unusual fascination with Saturday morning television and some chickens every now and then.
Yeah, the Flopcast is my little corner of the ESO network. And yeah, our show tends to be probably the silliest, goofiest show on the network, I think. I hope. That's what we're striving for.
And you strive for it well. You aim high.
We do tend to talk about chickens a lot for no particular reason. But beyond that, it's a lot of pop culture based, especially stuff from the 70s and 80s, 70s, 80s nostalgia talk, a lot of music talk. I think we talk more about music than probably most of the other shows on the network. We go out to concerts all the time and report about them on the show. We go to conventions. I'm going to a convention and a concert tomorrow, actually. So we have a lot to talk about coming up. I'm only half of the Flopcast because I have a wonderful co-host who people tend to like way more than me. That's Cornflake, and she's the best. So you get to hear Cornflake when you tune in as well. It's not just me whining about the monkeys every week. And you can find us at flopcast.net.
That's right. It's flopcast.net. You check out all their great shows. You're up to what, 330 something, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, wow, that is correct. We are in the 330s as far as total episodes. We've been putting out an episode every single week without fail for about 6.5 years now.
You guys are nothing compared to us.
We're just getting started.
I know, when you get to the big boys at the ESO network, just let them know. Just let them know.
Yep.
Exactly. When you guys pass 400, then I'll start being impressed.
That's right, because you're in the 400s now, correct?
Yep, we're coming up very quickly on episode 450.
Wow, that's amazing. I know I've done about 450, 500 combined, and I looked at
Oh,
it. Yeah, but
that's not
that's nothing.
our
That's
combined.
nothing.
That's not our combined. Our
No,
combined
no.
is probably over 1,000
Yeah,
because we also do the Dragon Con report and we also do Earth Station Who, and Earth Station Who is 5 episodes short right now of our 200th episode.
wow, that's just amazing. And you both should be applauded for your longevity within the podcast realm, the podcasting, the podcasting marketplace, or and maybe you guys should be committed like myself. I don't know.
Well, my wife says there's a room with a straitjacket waiting for me.
Exactly. Well, you'll just call it a soundproof room and easy to, great place to record, nice and quiet. But probably for me as well. But I will tell you this, guys, it's been a great pleasure having you on the show, having you part of the actual scene here, talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Just truly a pleasure to have you both on. That is Mike Faber from the ESO Network and Kevin Eldridge from the Flopcast. Guys, it's so great to have you on the show, part of the program, and of course, right here, a part of the pop culture cosmos.